Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Cowlitz County Board of Commissioners. I'd like to invite you to please rise if you can and join us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for the nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. If there is no exception, I'd like to adjust the agenda this morning to allow our auditor to make a special public announcement. If there's no objection. She's online. Carolyn, welcome this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me a minute here. So I am in this position again where the auditor is mandated by law to find citizens that are interested in serving on pro and con committees for the local voters pamphlet when jurisdictions fail to appoint. The Woodland School District ran a levy in the February election and it failed. They are running that proposition again in April. They have appointed a for committee, but failed to appoint an against committee. So we issue a press release. We have posted notice on our website, and I'm kind of doing my due diligence here and asking the public that is in the audience here, any interested parties would like to come forward. We're looking for people to contact us by tomorrow by 5 p.m. Doesn't mean that your statement has to be prepared by then. We're just looking to make sure that we solidify the appointment and get names and contact information and get the rules to those folks.
And can the committee be as small as a single person who wants to write in a paragraph?
Absolutely. So what we mandate is that one person on the committee must be appointed as the contact person and provide contact information in the local voters pamphlet. That can be as simple as creating a Gmail account for this very purpose and publishing that information so that they can take question and answers from the public.
All right, great.
I'd
Thank
like to point something else. Sorry, did you have a question, Arn?
I did, but I'm not sure whether, why don't you go ahead? And I'll ask it later.
I get a lot of questions about these propositions, and this one's a little bit unique, and I just kind of came across this information. So when a jurisdiction fails in, say, a February election, typically they go back and they'll rework their numbers. Sometimes they will reduce the numbers for the April election, listening to voter concerns. So in this case, I was comparing the numbers between the February election and the resolution that they submitted to our office last week. And I'm a little confused by it because the collection years and the total levy amount are the same. However, they reduced the assessed value. So they reduced the assessed value from $2.05 levy rate per 1,000 assessed value to $1.91. However, the total levy amount stayed the same. So I went to their website to see if they had any verbiage on this, and they did post a tweet actually saying that it'll have a lower estimated tax rate than those listed in the ballot in February, but it doesn't actually give a reason why. So might be a question that some interested party may want to ask the district.
Why don't you come forward? Yes. Somebody who attended the board meeting.
Oh,
offering to
great.
come up.
Crystal Moldenhauer. I'm the DA6 representative for WASDA, elected by school board members in 5 counties: Cowlitz, Clark, Skamania, Pacific, and Wakai.
You know, your head's cut off like right here. Go ahead and sit down. We'll get you all.
I actually attended their meeting after their levy failed, and it turns out that the assessed value collection amount was correct, but the actual tax assessed 205 was incorrect. It was supposed to read 191 in the first place. And so now they're just rerunning it with the correct. There was an error in their paperwork, basically. So now it's showing the right number for the $1.91, because that's what it was in the first place. So they just had an error in their paperwork first time around, is what they said at their meeting anyways.
Great, thank you.
So my question is, who picks up the tab for this election?
Well, the school district pays,
Okay,
so the taxpayers ultimately, but the school district pays their election costs.
and for this election, it's approximately how many dollars?
So before anybody jumps out of their seat, I would like to let you know that election costs, when you trigger an election, we call it turning on the lights. That means that you share a proportionate share in the large amount that is attributed to elections each year. So your basic turning on the lights is going to be about $40,000. In this case, for the school district, their size and proportion, I'm estimating that by running alone this April, they have no other jurisdictions to share the cost with. By running alone, it will cost anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000. Just guessing because, you know, price increases on paper and postage, everything is increasing, so I can't lock it down. So in the February election, they shared that cost with Kalama. It was Kalama and Woodland at the same time. So estimating their cost together could be about 65,000, but then they proportionately share that cost.
Okay, and that computation isn't anything you have any control over, right?
No, it's in statute. All costs attributed to an election are paid by those conducting elections, period. So we
Thank you.
gather all those costs all year long. At the end of the year, we split them up between elections and voter registration, and then we bill them out.
And you're confident the state pays their fair share?
So far, so good. Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you, Carolyn. Appreciate that.
Thanks for the
Hopefully
opportunity.
This will get you a name or two.
Anybody interested, please contact the elections office. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks for that interruption of our routine. At this point, I'd like to call on Commissioner Mortensen to review the minutes of our meetings from last week.
I, as usual, reviewed the minutes of the activities last week, and I move to approve those minutes.
Any corrections or questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I also vote aye. That motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Typically, we take one motion to adopt all of those items that are listed, unless anyone needs to be separately considered, and all you have to do is make that request. The first item on the consent agenda is a contract change order with Columbia River Contractors. These are the folks who have a contract to install guardrails, and it's a multi-year contract, and they've asked for a $22,000 increase. The guardrail costs reflect the number of accidents that people have on guardrails, and where we can find out who the person is that ran into the guardrail and caused the damage, we bill them in insurance. If it's a hit and run, we have to make up the costs on those repairs. So the latest request is a $22,000 increase to our contract. So that'll be about $410,000 so far on the contract for damaged guardrails that have to be repaired. Second item is a bid award to Battery Power Solutions for replacing and installing about 108 batteries for uninterruptible power supply at the Hall of Justice. They have been getting warnings that it's time to change those batteries out so that we can actually have uninterrupted power supply there. The third item is a change in our routines. We have had a morning staff meeting on the fourth Wednesday of each month that has not been very well attended, and by on recommendation of the staff members, they just as soon not have that on the schedule. But what we are doing is we are going to add a Wednesday evening workshop starting at 5:30 on the second Wednesday of each month. So that will be open to the public after the close of business hours for most people. So an evening meeting second Wednesday of each month. So that'll be starting in March, assuming the agenda gets passed today. The fourth item is a resolution rescinding the letter sent to the City of Longview regarding the Hope Village pilot project. The correspondence that we've received is, we've sent is a letter to the City of Woodland reminding them that we have allocated $2.6 million in the American Rescue Plan Act, that is ARPA, for repairs and realigning exit 29. Since we made that decision several months ago, we've not heard back from them, and those funds have to be formally allocated by the end of this year, or we lose the right to use them. So this is just a letter to get them to acknowledge that they're accepting those funds. And then last but not least, on our consent agenda, we've received from the auditor notification that they paid out almost $2.8 million last week in claims and vouchers, primarily salary amounts for the staff. Are there any questions or clarifications? Yes, sir.
Before we do that, if I could clarify some stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, on the item number one, it wasn't all for damaged guardrails. It's a sizable increase as a result of damaged guardrails, but that was just part of the normal maintenance of the guardrails until the damage occurs. And then we've had substantial increases there.
Yeah.
And on item 3, just for clarification, we're not adding the late afternoon Wednesday session. We're replacing the afternoon session that started at 1:30, and now we've moved it 4 hours later. And we did that because we recognize that people can't make all the meetings, and this is sort of a pilot program to see if this helps out the usual complaint. It hasn't in the past, so this is a pilot program.
And the staff is invited to attend our regular Monday morning staff meetings so we're not saying they can't show up at all. Yes, sir.
My question is on resolution, the item number 4 regarding the letter dated to the City of Longview rescinding the letter. Why and what was this letter about?
So the board made the decision not to consider the city's proposal that resulted in Hope Village being established. And my colleagues expressed displeasure in the words that I used to rescind that offer. It doesn't mean that we're going to be considering it. That decision has not been made.
That's fine. It's just like WASEC.
I hope I characterize that okay.
Yeah, that was fine. Actually, part of the redo is just, as you see, just clarification is a very useful thing. There was stuff on there that didn't clarify.
Yes.
Yes, Commissioners, regarding item 3 and moving a meeting till 5:30 at night. Just curiosity on your labor agreement. Some people of your staffs are under salary kind of floating times and others, et cetera. So do we incur overtime charges for anybody that has to be there more than their regular hours per your request for a meeting?
So the staff that generally comes are management level. They're not under they're exempt, so they don't do the overtime. Now, if we have hourly employees, that would be different. So but we usually don't have hourly employees that show up.
Right. I think the answer is it's not precluded. No doubt there will be time when we will have to pay overtime, but that's certainly a small element, I think.
Any other questions, comments? I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the consent agenda as discussed, along with the vouchers warrants in the amount of $2,789,464.74.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing no hands raised. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 And I abstain from this motion. That motion does pass. Next, we'll go on to the motion items. We have several requests from facilities maintenance.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman. The abstention is because of that letter?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Our first item, item number 6 on the agenda, is a bid award to Transblue for the construction of 2 trap houses and firing pads at the Cowlitz Public Shooting Range at a cost of $97,290, including tax. Will share with us a little bit about that project. Some people may not be aware of it.
Good morning, Commissioners. Will Tossett, Facilities Manager, and I have Dylan Wills, my project coordinator here. And I'll let him expand on that just a little bit more.
Super.
So out at the public range, currently they have 1 shooting pad and 1 trap hut. They want 2 more installed. That way they can start having competitions. It's a pretty straightforward job, just 2 extra concrete pads, 5 firing positions on each, and then 2 trap huts in front that contains the thrower.
So that is a program that is partially funded by the general fund of this county.
My understanding is that it's paid for by grant. We had to install a transformer to get power out to the new huts. Public Works did the trenching and the conduit install on that one.
Great, great. We did receive, I think, a 50% grant from the state of Washington, the RCO program.
Okay.
So that's great. And we were pretty pleased to hear that several high schools in the area do have shooting clubs, and this is going to be a great opportunity for tournaments. Otherwise, they have to go outside the area. So pretty excited about that new program. And my understanding is there is a phase 2 later on, not covered by this contract, that would provide restroom facilities.
Correct.
As well. Yes. Any other questions, comments?
Just a statement. I have no objection at all, but I do want to request that we keep the data of participation. There's very often claims of all kinds of things, and it's time we had everything anchored to. We said last year that we would have this many participants. We actually had this many, and that's maybe up or down, but just we can only do wise decisions if we have the data.
Right. And Savannah Clement is at the witness table, and she can send that message on to the Parks Department. They'll keep track of those things.
Yes. Good morning, Board. Yes, I would just only came up to speak on behalf of the RCO grant piece. Facilities hasn't really been a huge part of that. So if you guys had any questions about that, our team, along with Parks, Alyssa Dunn, have been pretty involved with that. Regarding the metrics of data, I can definitely work with Steve Nelson and their board over there at CGNA to get better data for you.
So this facility is expanded. Many people are already familiar with the public range, but there's actually a third range that just recently opened up. That's for the law enforcement. The sheriff and state patrol and other agencies are beginning to use that. It's not yet open to the public, my understanding is,
That's
because
correct.
it's for training purposes. And so they don't want to share that, I think.
Yes, you're right. We call that the 100-yard range, and it is for law enforcement purposes only at this time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
And you've got full, complete oversight over the economics of the budgets.
That's correct, with the exception of that 100-yard range. That is primarily the sheriff's office.
Right, but they lease it from you for some nominal fee.
It's not, no, the sheriff's office does not. They've worked an agreement out with CGNA, so they might use them as a pass-through. So it's not directly with us, but
Right, okay.
yes.
So again, CGNA, that
Cowlitz Game
acronym
and
needs to be
Anglers, yes.
explained. So
Cowlitz Game and Anglers is what we would refer to as CGNA.
they are the volunteer group that operates the shooting range on our behalf. So we don't have staff
That's correct.
providing services over there when the range is open.
And once the range is built, there is no expected subsidy from the taxpayers for the use of the range?
For the trap range specifically, no, really no, not for any range up there would be a taxpayer burden. That's
Okay.
correct. And that's why we
Just
have.
general maintenance, because they are county
Yes, and
facilities.
yes, it is. And it is considered a park.
Is considered a what, I'm sorry?
Excuse me, it is under our park system. Technically, we consider it a park. The volunteer labor that we have there keeps our overhead costs, I mean, really down to a really low amount. We use their revenues and they just put it back into park improvements there.
Yeah, I think we cannot overstate the amount of volunteer labor and the heart and soul, of those folks.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mhm.
Just a community coordination perspective. Do these shooting ranges that you're talking about on the county have any synergy or connection with the shooting range that the City of Longview was planning for training for their police department and others?
No.
Completely separate.
Separate, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There kind of sort of is a connection in that absent these two facilities, all the local law enforcements were trudging in the mud and muck out at Crystal Pool, where there is a range that's available to them, but it's not being maintained by the owners, so they've sought other alternatives. Okay, any other questions? I would entertain a motion then.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the bid award to Transblue for construction as has been discussed.
Any further discussion? All right, no hands are up. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 I also vote aye. That motion carries. Our next item is a bid award to Collins Architectural Group for the purposes of being the firm that we can rely on for professional architecture and engineering services for county projects. We have had another architect firm and it was time to go out for bid. And we understand that 7 different companies made an offer and Collins was selected. Will, you want to share with us just a little bit about that selection process?
Yeah, good morning. Again, Will Tossett, Facilities Maintenance. We went out and it was actually 8. So we went out for a request for qualifications. 8 architect groups submitted their qualifications for review. We had a group which included a staff engineer for public works, purchasing, public works department and facilities as well. We reviewed the qualifications and went through an interview process. We all scored each architect firm, and then with the tally of scores, Collins came in as the chosen architect group.
Great. Any questions for staff?
How soon does it change over? So we extended the Jacola contract for 3 months last time or something like that?
Yeah, so we still have some ongoing projects in which Jacola, the previous architect group, is a part of. You know, they will review some submittals, roofing submittals, product delivery submittals. That contract is expired. However, there's still ongoing until their projects are finished. When Collins comes on board, we will then use them directly for on-call architectural services for future projects.
And of course, there's no price in the bid award because we don't know what the projects are going to be. It's the floating. They're the selected consultant, basically.
Correct.
But in that selection, do we not ask beyond qualifications, like how much do you charge for what circumstances?
Yeah, so from my understanding, Ashley could probably expand on that a little bit more, but the first step in the process is awarding. The next step in the process, once awarded, is negotiations for that price.
So we'll get the fee schedule back at a different time.
But that,
Correct.
that seems strange. I know we don't have final numbers, but certainly if Collins were 3 times the price of the previous, we wouldn't do it, right? So we have to have a fair idea that we're actually going to be at the same price level or below or just slightly above because of inflation or circumstances. But with 8 respondents, hopefully we have a good price.
Good morning, Commissioners. I do see Ashley's unmuted. I don't know if she would like to explain a little bit further into the process.
Good morning. I was unmuting just in case I was called on. But yes, architecture and engineering services are considered professional services. And under RCW, those are qualifications based only, and we are not allowed to ask for pricing. Once awarded, we can negotiate the price with the highest scoring firm. If we do not come to an agreement, we can then move to the next highest scoring firm.
Thank you. That's quite clear.
Very good.
It hasn't been unheard of to go back to the drawing board if a price can't be negotiated, if it's unfair, too high, unreasonable. We do have the ability to do that, and we have done it, I know, on engineering contracts.
And this is the process we followed with.
Yes, it is the process we follow.
with the
This is
other
not
architect.
abnormal.
One of the things we talked about this in workshop yesterday, and one of the interesting things that we all, I think, appreciate is that Collins is a local firm rather than
Yes.
coming up from elsewhere.
Yes, they've, this firm has done several projects that a lot of people are probably familiar with. Most recently, to my knowledge, is the Kelso School District updates, which were pretty significant updates. Butler Acres, Lexington Elementary. This was the designing firm on those.
I'm still having a
Yeah.
hard time. I know Ashley was quite clear. You remind me that there are contracts that have been executed, or these people have done work here. I assume you look into that and you know what those prices are because they're already known and available to you?
Do you mean contract pricing for other agencies, like for Collins specifically? Would we go and look at their pricing contracts?
You said that Collins had built several things in the county. And I think some of them are governmental, so we know what the prices were. I imagine you scanned that and looked at it and said, okay, it's the ballpark at least.
When I'm looking and reviewing, because we do a standard template, and I know Susan Eugene as county engineer is also on, she might be able to explain it a little bit better than me, but they actually do include what their price increase savings was on their contract or change order overage. They do their total contracts amounts for the agencies they list as references. And it will tell you, not exactly as Ashley stated, they cannot include their pricing, but they include what their percentage increase over was on those projects that they list specifically. And Collins did do that. That's as far as we got for looking specifically at costs for individual projects like the Kelso School District.
Yeah, I'm fully appreciative of the process of then you go into negotiations after making this selection. But it sounds, I've already said, you know, we needed a little more information, and I think you just offered it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I know, and I think it's fair to share that we did have some questions about the service that we were getting. They had been the only bidder last time.
That's correct. Chicola was the only
And
bidder.
staff explained that they went through and revised their bids, got more information and got more bids. So I think the improvements ensure that we're getting a better product. Assuming successful negotiation with the price.
We will try.
Out of curiosity, was there one key element in the previous RFQ that made only one person apply?
Do you want to answer that?
The answer.
I'm going to keep trying to pull my resources here, which is Susan Eugenius. I know she was on for this topic, but she had some specific changes that she wanted made and had those made. I just can't speak to exactly what they were. And unfortunately, I don't see her on as a panelist.
She was.
There she is. She just popped up.
There she is.
Soon.
So
Hi,
good morning.
Susan. Did you hear the question?
Yes, about what specifically we changed, and I don't remember the exact specifics, but Ashley and I worked through the last RFQ, and she had received comments from Collins and other architects that there was one paragraph of requirements that they were not comfortable with, so they did not submit. Ashley, do you remember what that was?
It had to do with qualifications and being LEED certified. Was the main topic of.
And so LEED certified is the energy efficiency, and there's a whole process that you need to be going through to get that. Most of them we did ask as part of the interview question about their experience with LEED, and most of them had experience with that process. So I don't completely recall why they were concerned about how it was written. I think there was some very specific language about the qualifications that made them all hesitate the time before.
Well, it sounds like you made an excellent choice in advancement on this. I appreciate that.
Great. Any further questions, discussion? All right, seeing no hands up, I would entertain a motion.
While I do find it a little bit odd that you can't discuss price until you have a contract, I'm fully comfortable with the work they did, and it's nice to see a local firm get this bid. So I would move to approve the bid award to Collins Architectural Group for the purpose of selecting firm to conduct a wide range of professional architecture and engineering services.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 I also vote aye. That motion carries. Then,
Thank you.
thank you. The next item we have is from the Commissioner's Office, a resolution seeking approval of a statement regarding support for the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, the right to bear arms, and opposition to any laws which restrict the individual rights of citizens. I think Commissioner Mortensen, you were the proposer.
Oh, no, it was your colleague to your left.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go.
We had a resolution, we have a resolution intact. It's resolution 19-008. And it was brought up in, if I remember, Mark can correct me, but I think it was 2017 or 18. And it was in response to I-1639. So we have an existing resolution on tap. What I wanted to do was expand it a little further. So this resolution that I'm proposing takes in both the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, which is the right of people to be secure in their homes, and the 14th Amendment, which makes it, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens in the United States. And I also wanted to bring some adjudicated court law into it. So I reference that affirming the Second Amendment rights. And then it also referenced the Constitution, Washington State Constitution, that talks about those same three things. Right to bear arms, right to not be disturbed in your private affairs, your home invaded, those type of things. So it's an expanded version. So I'm looking to replace the existing one with this new one. Now we sent a copy over to the sheriff's office, to Sheriff Thurman, to look at it, and also to the prosecuting attorneys, Ryan Jervikainen, to look at it. And our attorney has looked at it, and there are a couple minor suggestions that I'm comfortable with, we can discuss, but I don't have any issues with some of the minor adjustment. Some of it's just wordsmithing and one of it is taking out a duplication of what was said earlier in the proposal. So I don't know if there's a copy of it with everybody there or not, but that's kind of the business of it. It's just want to replace the one we have with one that's a little more expanded and takes into just further expands on the rights our citizens have.
So in the language, there is a specific reference to the sheriff, the elected sheriff, and in which we state that we affirm our support for the sheriff exercising his lawful discretion and duties, which is appropriate. But the sheriff only determines who gets investigated, who gets arrested if there's grounds. Prosecutor is the one that actually determines whether they're brought to trial and formally accused. Do we want to add the prosecutor along with the sheriff? Because the prosecutor plays a very significant role. And it's not just up to the sheriff, but the prosecutor plays an important role in protecting those rights.
Yeah, you know, the reason for having the sheriff in there and if the prosecutor wants to be part of that too, that's fine. The reason I had that and left that in there was I wanted to make sure and when we had the workshop, Sheriff Thurman came on the line and I explained it to him too. And I explained it to people at the workshop is I wanted them to know that the commissioners fully stand behind, you know, the actions they take. I didn't want it to be and I don't believe this commissioner board would do this, but didn't want their board to say, if they had to take action, we'd sit back and say, well, I wasn't sure we wanted you to do that. I want it to be real clear that this board up here stands behind the actions they take on behalf of this resolution. And that was my thought, my purpose for putting it in there. I think that suggestion, if our prosecuting attorney wants to be part of that, I don't have any objection to expressing support of our commissioners.
I see Sheriff Thurman is online. Sheriff?
Good morning. Yep. As I've reviewed the resolution since the last meeting, and I am comfortable with the wording of that. And I just want to make clear this is an inherent right of the people, that there's nothing, I guess this resolution does not change that. It actually lies with the people and is a support of the people's rights to keep and bear arms. So I'm in favor of this.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments?
So the copy I have doesn't have a signature block that includes the sheriff. Is that, I'm assuming Brad's happy to sign it also?
This one.
Yours does, but the one this morning doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Was that an oversight, Kelly? Oh. Yeah, this one has to be cleaned up anyway for a final one. So there'll be a signature block for.
And I imagine with the PA, because you're saying we accept the modifications by the PA's office, that if we can get the PA's signature on that helps people. It reminds me of we're in tough times. There'll be more tough times, and we can either hang separately or hang. Yeah. You know, I think that was Ben Franklin.
So are you comfortable with adding the prosecutor to the list?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and accept that as an adjustment, as well as the prosecutor's suggested changes. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Unfortunately, this is a sign of the times that we have to go to extraordinary efforts to protect all of our rights that are already guaranteed under the Constitution. But we are in a period where we have national politicians and politicians at most levels doing everything they can to destroy the sovereignty of us as individuals. And I'll give you an example of what's going on right now with the Biden administration and who. They are in the process of giving away our national security whenever who decides to declare a pandemic. And this is a very dangerous trend. And so that forces us at every level of government, at the lowest levels, to do everything we can to make all of these rules stringent to protect the individuals.
So, Mr. Crosby, you used an acronym.
Who?
Yes,
World Health Organization.
part of the United Nations.
Yes, very, very dangerous outfit. So yes, I applaud anything. Unfortunately, we have to do this and I applaud it and, hopefully make it stronger if you have to.
Any other comments?
If I might, I clicked accidentally that would answer a question online. And the question was something about if wanting to tackle constitutionality of federal and state law, perhaps Commissioner Dahl's efforts would be more appropriate, pointed at the federal and state levels. Using county time and resources for this is not effective leadership. And I wanted to say simple one letter answer, no. I mean, one word answer, no. So I think the presumption in the questions is completely inaccurate, useless, dilatory, incompetent, and irrelevant. How's that? I've been watching the Perry Mason show.
Yes, sir.
I have a question about a
You
resolution.
might need to lean a little bit closer.
I have a question about a resolution. Is it anything more than just a statement?
In this instance, there are times when we pass resolutions that establish things like, price lists and rate things that's done by resolution. In this type of resolution, it is a sense of the commission. But it doesn't specify, it doesn't take statutory action. It just says, this is where we stand.
And this resolution could be used as some kind of rebellion against state law? Or people voted
Yeah, in
regulations?
In fact, during the epidemic, we passed a series of resolutions that expressed our displeasure with the governor and the actions that he took. So
And it could be displeasure with the voters.
Mhm.
The rules that we enacted in our state voting, correct?
I think there was an initiative that was passed, right?
I wasn't, I was
He
thinking of
was saying
something.
it could also be used as an expression of displeasure to the
Oh,
vote.
it can be used from A to Z. We could accompany a resolution with a change in the county code, for example. So it could express something that says, and the county code will be modified or something like that. And
Is there anything in a county code that deals with gun regulations? My understanding is that's a state responsibility.
Well, that's the problem. I have a little difficulty with how you're phrasing questions because, and I'm probably the odd man out. It's not the state's business to violate the Constitution.
Right.
So when we say we're going to genuflect to the state or even anything like that, I think we've already opened the barn and let the horses out for that. It's important to understand the way laws change is generally by either at night, the politicians with their night, the stuff, or by the massive impact of the public opinion. So let me give you a classic example, drunk driving. There were laws for that forever, and the stigma on drunk driving didn't really change until the Mothers Against Drunk Driving took the nation by storm, if you will, and changed people's attitude about drunk driving. It was no longer macho. Well, we need to have people here understand that the United States has been as successful as it has been, not because it's good fortune or the manna from heaven. It's because we followed certain fundamental requirements in the Constitution.
And who is responsible for interpreting the Constitution?
You are.
So we don't need courts. We don't need our legal system. Each one of us can interpret the Constitution to say just what we want.
If you look at the earlier founding fathers and all that, it isn't quite as simple as what we want. It's a contract. Now, the courts are supposed to define or adjudicate arguments of contract, and that's perfectly legitimate. But to cede the power of the people to the court, even the Supreme Court, is really not what certainly Thomas Jefferson had in mind. The Seventh Amendment even has a sense in there. The findings of a common law court are not to be reviewed by any U.S. court. That means the Supreme Court also. Anyhow, this could go on for a long time. I'm sure you're familiar with all the discussions.
One of the parts of the Constitution that isn't listed, though, is the First Amendment, which entitles us to have the freedom to express our views, and that will obviously remain. That's why we do have a lot of public open comment at these meetings to allow people to express their wisdom. One of the interesting revelations that I had coming onto this commission 10 years ago was that, contrary to what I kind of sort of assumed by winning an election, that I had an enormous amount of discretion at the county level. And almost immediately, the first statewide training meeting I went to, they said, the state of Washington provides the guidelines for what county commissioners can do. If we don't want that, if we want a little bit more discretion for county commissioners, you have to change the local government to a charter. But even that charter has to fall within the guidelines of the state. The state constitution, in which there is a very eloquent statement about the sovereignty belonging to the people, is filled with restrictions on government and what government can and cannot do. So it is this interesting dynamic, constantly balancing what the rights are, and everybody has a different opinion. Ultimately, and with respect, I would disagree. Ultimately, in our system, we have provided for a court system that is the final arbiter. Even the 14th Amendment, which is cited in this, says no rights can be abridged without due process of law. So the process of law is what has to be fair and reasonable. And we constantly struggle with that. There are some times when laws come about, the emergency declarations on the pandemic, that were unreasonable. It's proven to be pretty unreasonable. And yet the majority of those elected officials in Olympia refused to put curbs on that emergency power. And that's a frustration. They didn't pay attention to our resolution saying you went too far, but they are beginning to come to an end, all those restrictions, and thank goodness for that, but the damage has already been done.
And if I could add on to that, that's exactly true. The problem with that is the people went to the courts, which are owned by the governor, and therefore who is going to prevail in that one?
Well, they're not owned, of course, not owned by the governor, but he did appoint most of them to office to begin with. They're all elected officials. We do have, I'll get to you, but we did have somebody with their hand raised. Tom Samuels, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, commissioners. I don't know how Commissioner Mortensen performs the mental gymnastics to oppose taxpayer dollars for feeding elderly shut-ins, but without blinking an eye, he votes to spend $100,000 to build trap ranges. Talk about something that should be user-funded. But I digress. I don't suppose it matters to most of you that on Wednesday, February 15th, The very day you workshopped this grandstanding resolution, the Oregon Court of Appeals ruled on a nearly identical effort in Cowlitz County's neighbor across the river in Columbia County. Their resolution even had appeared before a vote of the people. Yet, in a ruling that is expected to reverberate throughout the nation, the appeals court determined the Columbia County's Second Amendment sanctuary status was unlawful, and that local governments cannot ban police from enforcing certain gun laws. Columbia County Commissioner Casey Garrett admitted, quote, "The reality is counties don't necessarily get to make those decisions, whether I wish they could or not," end quote. And so, commissioners, besides appeasing your fanatical bases, what does this really accomplish other than potentially exposing the county to costly litigation? You are not constitutional scholars, even though you sure love to pretend like you are. And it is not in your job description as commissioners to engage in theatrics like this. In the event legislation is passed in Olympia or even DC, and you believe it is repugnant to the state or federal constitutions, it would be appropriate to file an amicus brief to any litigation that might ensue. But this is just grandstanding and posturing and cannot be construed to be within the scope of your duties. Also, how can you vote on a resolution today that doesn't even have a final draft available for the public to examine? It sure seems like the resolution's proponents expect Mr. Jervikainen and Sheriff Thurman will sign on to this. But what if they ultimately decline to? Is the board going to attempt to force them? And what kind of a rift will that develop in our county structure? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samuels. The only actual authority we have over separately elected officials is the power of the purse. We do approve their budgets, but we cannot direct them. You're absolutely right on that.
And using the power of the purse is a problem.
Yeah, that wasn't intended to be any kind of a threat at all on something like that. We did mention that this has been reviewed by our civil deputy prosecuting attorney, works for the elected prosecuting attorney's office. And he did bring up that Oregon case and made the adjustments so that we weren't running afoul of the court decision. So we've taken care of that. Let's see, we do have another hand up, but let's go with you.
Jim Collins, I live here in Cowlitz County, and with the agenda here at hand, the Second Amendment, we have to do everything in the world we possibly can to keep the far outreaching of the federal government and the World Health Organization, which, you know, we know what they've already stated just in the last couple of days, the Biden administration, to be involved with the World Health Organization. If that comes about, we have to do everything we do to keep them from taking those firearms from us, from our cold, dead hands, period. Everything we can do to protect ourselves and make sure that our local sheriff will protect us, because we know what happened here this last 2 years, where we had businesses infringed upon, churches infringed upon, because he wouldn't do his job. He probably should have watched Compliant Sheriff. Anyway. Thank you.
All right, Vicky Eckert has her hand up. Vicky, make sure you're unmuted. Nope. We can't hear you if you are trying to speak. Okay. Check.
I wasn't, that was an accident.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Okay, any other? Yes.
Well, I guess I just want to clarify from a couple of previous comments that were made. First of all, there's nothing in this resolution that runs afoul of the Constitution, in either state or federal. Are you comfortable with that? I mean, after you had the prosecuting attorney's office review it, the sheriff's reviewed it. I'm I'm not sure why people are all bent out of shape that all of a sudden it's going against the Constitution somewhere. And number two, in a court case, the jury's made up of we the people, again, deciding on a lot of court issues that go before the court. So it's not necessarily always the government till you get to higher levels up to a Supreme Court somewhere. Which in oftentimes I would have to agree that those are too often controlled by the person who appointed them to begin with, or what their leanings are. But anyway, I digress. My major point was there's nothing in here that violates the Constitution, and you've done due diligence and had it reviewed by the proper people. So I'm happy with it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've heard from 3 people so far. Is there anyone in opposition? And we've heard from 1 person in opposition. Any others in opposition? Tom, your hand is still raised. I didn't know. There you go. Okay. We could continue listening to everybody say they support the resolution if we don't have any opposition. So I just know that we don't have an unlimited time. We do have some other things this morning to get to. Ron.
Yes, I come before you in support of this resolution on 2 bases. Number one, we still are a representative government, hopefully, and that you, the commissioners, are representative of your constituents in expressing and supporting us, and our sheriff and prosecuting attorney are elected officials in support of us. And during the past election time, the constitutionality where our sheriff stood came up numerous times and was discussed on constitutionality and where he stands. And this is a response to the executive overreach of our governor under 2 years of executive emergency orders, selectively deciding some businesses that could continue and others that couldn't, and that was significant overreach.
Yep. Thank you.
I would just like a clarification. Does this resolution mean that the Board of Commissioners, the sheriff, and the prosecuting attorney will have the back of the citizens of this county should the state of Washington or the executive of the state of Washington or the federal government executive branch should try to impose onerous and unconstitutional edicts upon the citizens of this county?
I think we have to speak for ourselves, and I can tell you myself, Rob, that, yeah, I'd wear orange.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this. And I think this is a very honorable and a brave thing that you're doing here.
Yes, sir. Okay. We surprisingly don't have a motion yet. You're ready.
Chair, a little guidance, because it replaces an existing one, do you want that all in one motion?
Does it? Or we just add it to the list? It doesn't counteract anything. In there.
Doesn't counteract anything. So
We
we'll
don't
just do
necessarily
this.
have to repeat
Okay,
it.
good.
I don't
Then
think we do.
I would move to approve the resolution regarding the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution with the adjustments that we have talked about.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Okay. No hands up. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 I also vote aye. That motion does carry. That brings us to the end of our agenda. This is the time for public comment on anything else that needs to be brought to our attention. Floor is yours.
I'll forget what I gotta say.
Let me express Chair's discretion. Ladies before Tim.
Yes. Hi, so, sorry, Tim. I am here to speak on behalf of something I have started, hopefully that Longview School Board will jump on with, but now that you guys are talking about a resolution saying that you guys support the Second Amendment, I am here to ask that you guys do the same thing for the First Amendment and the religious rights with people within our county. Currently, things are happening where people are forced to toe the line and go against their religious beliefs and say things that they don't believe and accept, be forced to accept and say things that they'll go against their beliefs, and they're being persecuted in our county. I ask that the county creates a resolution supporting the religious rights of its citizens that allow them to be able to stand firm in their faith, and that you guys will support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Tim.
Hey, mine's just really quick, and it's just a kind of the display up here of the pictures.
Yeah.
I believe they're in the wrong order. It should be, Washington should be ahead of the governor, and the president should be ahead of the governor. It's like they should be in a different order right there. I know for flags, it's official kind of thing.
On the
And,
other hand, the governor is on the left side.
yeah, you do have that. But somebody ought to look into that. I've had to correct them over at Kelso, and so hopefully that gets changed to the correct display organization.
President Washington is larger. This
Yeah,
is
that's-
right.
That's good. You know, I mean, artistically, it kind of looks good, you know, and I like the de-ranking of Biden there too, but I don't think it's the proper display. But that's just a minor point, but nobody else was going to say anything, and I felt like I wanted to talk.
All right. Anyone else? So I do want to remind you at 11 o'clock, we have a bid opening. There are a couple of items that will be done for the bid opening. At 11:30, the commissioner's office and several other county officials will be joining with the Cowlitz Economic Development Council at their annual meeting. In fact, there will be some discussions about economic growth in Cowlitz County, where we're at and where we're headed. So we're looking forward to that. And then I believe we still have a 1:30 work conference this afternoon. We canceled that because we'll be, and because the three of us are going together at that lunch, our secretary will be there to make sure we don't make decisions. Oh, yes. So again, don't forget the Wednesday evening workshop starting next week.
Next week.
That'll be the
the
second
8th.
Wednesday. That'll be a
Yeah.
new feature for folks who might be interested in looking in on what the workshop is. And there aren't any other announcements. I think our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.